So you may remember that in chapter 15, it was described that the boys, Krishna and Balaram, and the other boys, turned from 5 to 6 years old and thus started to take care of cows rather than calves. And that festival is celebrated during the month of Kartik. So the story of Denuka and the killing of the Dhenukasura in Talavan took place in the autumn. And at the end of the chapter, it was described that now one time when it was very hot and the boys were out herding cows, that they drank the water from the Jamuna, which was poisonous. So we're picking up now in the summertime. Months have passed after the last chapter, and we'll dive into the beginning of the next chapter. Let me bring it up here. This is still November, lessons 7 and 8, 2024. For those who haven't done so, please sign up and enroll for the December course. We're now in chapter 16, Subduing Kaliya. Samapriya, can you help by choosing our readers, please?
Yes. Hare Krishna, everyone. This is a very wonderful part of the Bhagavatam. And let's start off with Acharya. Prabhu, would you like to read?
Sure, thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 16, Text 1, Sarartha Darshini. Shukadev Goswami said, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, seeing that the Yamuna River had been contaminated by the black snake Kaliya, desired to purify the river, and thus the Lord banished him from it. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. This chapter describes Sri Krishna's pastime of subduing the serpent Kaliya, showing pleasure with the prayers of the Nagapatnis and banishing Kaliya from the river Yamuna. In this verse, Krishnam refers to the Yamuna. Seeing how Kaliya was polluting the Yamuna with poison, Krishna decided to banish that black snake.
Maybe you can give a little comment. Why would Krishnam refer to the Jamuna?
It's generally recognized that the Yamuna has darkish waters, dark-colored waters from the mud and silt in it, and especially that's usually noted in comparison with the Ganges, which is more light-colored or even golden-colored. So they're sometimes compared like that the Yamuna is darkish water and the Ganges is light-colored or golden water.
And what does Krishnam refer to?
Krishna means blackish.
Thank you.
Acharya, how do you know so much? Very good.
From reading Dhruva Maharaj Prabhu's Vrindavan Kirtan book.
Yeah, right.
Very good
I
answer.
don't know about
Perfect. Go on. Keep reading for a little while. I'll tell you when and you'll read up until where it says the end of the first Krishna book thing.
Okay.
You can read. Okay.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 16, Text 2 and 3, Sarartha Darshini. King Parikshit inquired, O learned sage, please explain how the Supreme Personality of Godhead chastised the serpent Kaliya within the unfathomable waters of the Yamuna, and how it was that Kaliya had been living there for so many ages. O Brahmana, the unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead freely acts according to his own desires. Who could be satiated when hearing the nectar of the magnanimous pastimes he performed as a cowherd boy in Vrindavan?
And this is how Srila Prabhupada.
I should read this also?
Yes, please.
Okay, Krishna book from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:16, text 3 through 7. Shukadev Goswami narrated the story as follows. Within the river Yamuna, there was a great lake, and in that lake, the black serpent Kaliya used to live. Because of his poison, the whole area was so contaminated that it emanated a poisonous vapor 24 hours a day. If a bird happened to even pass over the spot, he would immediately fall down in the water and die. Due to the poisonous effect of the Yamuna's vapors, the trees and grass near the bank of the Yamuna had all dried up. Lord Krishna saw the effect of the great serpent's poison. The whole river that ran before Vrindavan was now deadly. Krishna, who advented himself just to kill all undesirable elements in the world, immediately climbed up in a big Kadamba tree on the bank of the Yamuna. The Kadamba is a round yellow flower generally seen only in the Vrindavan area. After climbing to the top of the tree, he tightened his belt cloth and, flapping his arms just like a wrestler, jumped in the midst of the poisonous lake. The Kadamba tree from which Krishna had jumped was the only tree there which was not dead. Some commentators say that due to touching the lotus feet of Krishna, the tree became immediately alive.
That tree is still alive, even today, 5,000 years later. There it is.
Jai Kadambaji.
And this is a Kadamba flower.
I have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask about that. Acharya, what do you think it means? The unfathomable, the unfathomable Yamuna. How come Yamuna is referred to as being unfathomable?
Yeah, I'm not sure either, although that also caught my attention. I have a speculation that just like Govardhan Hill was much, much bigger in previous times, in Krishna's time and even the time before that, perhaps the Yamuna River was bigger and more massive and deeper than it is now, possibly, or maybe just that lake which is like a branch of the river where Kalia was especially big and deep. But I don't have anything, factual or authoritative, just speculating.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I'll give my 2 cents.
Okay, please.
Unfathomable, because it's a completely spiritual, it's a river. This is a place of Krishna's pastime, so it's as infinite as he is. And that was something I just thought of now.
Yeah. Or but, unfathomable in the sense of inconceivable. That's also unfathomable.
Yeah, that's our favorite
spiritual
word.
and beyond material intelligence. So unfathomable in that sense also. Yeah.
Pati, do you want to say something about that?
It seems like you're both right, because it does describe later, since I've read ahead and prepared the course materials for it, the lake in which the Jamuna comes from Delhi, and then as it comes towards Vrindavan, it turns a bit toward the east and then goes again south towards Mathura, and then flows to Mathura. And we know that there are some of the forests that Krishna and Balaram would play in on one side of the river, as well as the other side of the river. So as it comes toward the Vrindavan area, it's described that it was 8 miles wide, that lake.
Wow.
So it is much bigger than what it is today. And of course, you can look at even there are pictures of people that have taken pictures of glaciers in the early 1920s and 30s. It's only been 100 years. And you see those glaciers or any nature that's changed tremendously over only 100 years. So to speak of 5,000 years. So that was a huge lake. And it's described even when the question will be raised by Maharaj Parikit, why Kalia came to the Jamuna. He actually came from the ocean. And since he was so used to deep depths, that was a suitable place for him. So that's another indication that it was very deep, like you said. But also some of his points, it's fascinating. Jamuna used to be much different. And of course, they used to, obviously, even the architecture from a few hundred years ago has bathing steps where people would walk down into the river, whereas today it's a it's a road, it's a tar road. So they've changed the riverbank to that, unfortunately.
Okay, I have another question. This is a little bit esoteric, but It can, and it can be and should be applied to our lives today. Krishna kills all the undesirable elements. He came to kill all the undesirable elements. So how can we apply that today? Anyone?
Well, one meaning is, like from Bhagavad Gita, that he comes to destroy the demons and protect the devotees. And we could also, undesirable elements means other things besides demons. Undesirable elements in our behavior, in our heart, in society. There's no end to the list of undesirable
Well,
elements.
how does Krishna clean that up? How does
Right.
Krishna come to clean up the undesirable elements within ourselves?
By Bhagavatam says what the Sanskrit's escaping me. One who gets a taste for hearing and chanting, then Krishna from within their heart cleanses all the dirty things. What's that from the second chapter?
Oh,
Yeah,
it gives them the intelligence by which he can come to. They can come to him.
Srinvatam Svakata
Yeah.
Krishna is one.
right. Yeah, that's what I was
That's in
thinking of.
Bhagavatam.
Shinvanam Swakata, Punya Shravan, that one who gets a taste for hearing and chanting, which is
Good.
auspicious and pious in itself. Krishna from within the heart cleanses all dirty things.
Priyadantasto Hiyabhadrani Vidunoti Suhritsatam.
Sitam, yes.
Good.
Chaitadarpana Marjanam, chanting, he's advented as his holy name.
Yes. And that's being performed greatly here at this time in Alachua.
Yeah.
Very wonderful festival going on. The glorification of the holy name is being performed. And so we have to see that this is happening to us in our lives too. Very good. Okay, shall we go on with, how about Faye and Neil? Would you like to read, Faye? And did we take, Patti, did we take too little time looking at the Kadamba tree?
Well, anybody have any questions about it? It's beautiful, beautiful flowers.
Oh,
They only bloom in the late summer, like around the rainy season. As you can see, they're not blooming in this particular photograph.
Very fragrant.
Over here is where the Jamuna. Oh no, this is the steps that would go down into the water.
We were there when the Yamuna
Yes.
was that
And this
deep.
is
Came all the way there.
Yeah, we've seen it, but that was a long time ago. Yes, Tisha.
Actually, even in historic time, it wasn't that long ago that the Yamuna was actually right up to that.
Yeah, sure. I'm doing
Yeah,
the time
we
of the
were
British, I'm
there
sure.
during that time.
a few decades even.
What happened was that the state of Haryana, which is connected to Delhi, diverted the water for their own state's agricultural needs, created a big dam, and diverted all the water to their own farms. Oops.
Okay.
Tisha had a
Now,
question.
Tisha.
I was just wondering, what is that, a temple around the tree, or kind of what's around there?
Next to it, what you see on the outside here, you see on the far left side as you're looking at the stream, that's a temple.
In India, a lot of the times what they do is they'll actually build kind of a place where people can sit here, a little platform. This is actually earth inside. This is like a big flower pot, like a big tree pot. It's just a place where people can sit there and all this architecture. So that's not really a temple, but people can go up and they do put ribbons and different things on the tree at various times.
It's amazing that it's 5,000 years old. Ooh, old. Okay, let's go on with the next slide. And also these flowers are very, very, very fragrant. They grow also in Mayapur. Extremely fragrant flowers. Okay, Faye, why don't you read?
Hare Krishna. Good morning, devotees. Good morning, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna book, corresponding with Srimad Bhagavatam 10:16, verses 7 through 11. When Krishna was swimming about, just like a great strong elephant, he made a tumultuous sound, which the great black serpent Kaliya could hear. The tumult was intolerable for him, and he could not and he could understand that this was an attempt to attack his home. Therefore, he immediately came before Krishna. Kaliya saw that Krishna was indeed worth seeing because his body was so beautiful and delicate. Its color resembled that of a cloud, and his legs resembled a lotus flower. He was decorated with srivast, jewels, and yellow garments. He was smiling with a beautiful face and was playing in the river Jamuna with great strength. But in spite of Krishna's beautiful features, Kaliya felt great anger within his heart, and thus he grabbed Krishna with his mighty coils. Seeing the incredible way in which Krishna was enveloped in the coils of the serpent, the affectionate cowherd boys and inhabitants of Vrindavan immediately became stunned out of fear. They had dedicated everything to Krishna, their lives, property, affection, activities, everything was for Krishna. And when they saw him in that condition, they became overwhelmed with fear and fell down on the ground. All the cows, bulls, and small calves became overwhelmed with grief, and they began to look at him with great anxiety. Out of fear, they could only cry in agony and stand erect on the bank, unable to help their beloved Krishna.
Okay, I have a question. There's a very special, unique kind of love being described here. I mean, here is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? You want to put it back for a second, Patti? The text, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is fear personified, is afraid of him. He is the strongest, everything is emanating from him, and here are devotees crying because they're thinking that something, some kind of, he's in some kind of danger. Could you explain that, Faye? What is that all about?
Mataji, I'll try, but please correct me if I don't answer adequately.
Don't worry, I will.
The love for Krishna in Braj, everyone there is focused attentively on thinking of Krishna, serving Krishna, loving Krishna. The rasa of exchanges of being parents or being friends, lovers, whatever rasas are going on between those people, individuals, and Krishna are very intense. They savor that. They don't know Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead because of Maya's wonderful curtain there. All they can do is love. And because they love him so intently, they are at the verge of anxiety and panic and fear. And it's so humongous because they love him so much.
Right.
We're literally paralyzed. Even the dear cows and bulls and calves are, oh no, what's going to happen? And it's out of their special love for Krishna.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, it's very interesting that people who are on the highest platform think of Krishna as an ordinary person, and the people who are on the lowest platform think of Krishna as an ordinary person, isn't it? People who are atheistic and don't believe in God, obviously, they think Krishna's just an ordinary person. Just why worship him? And then all the most ecstatic, loving, profound devotees, they also feel that, but in a different way. Very good. Thank you for that. Anyone else has something to say about the unique love of the residents of Braj?
Manvantari has her hand up.
Oh, Manvatarji. Hare Krishna,
Hey, Hare
please.
Krishna.
Hare
So I was
Rama.
reading Premananda's post on this section, and is rather interesting. But I didn't know, and I wished for clarification. He he wrote a very poetic, I don't even know if he's here, a very poetic stance on this particular part of the pastime. And he described the jiva being enveloped in the coils of Maya. And I was thinking, is that philosophically correct? I know we're forced, you know, the jiva is forced into material nature and material bodies, but that description, I didn't think the soul, the jiva, had anything to do with material versus the consciousness, you know, the material consciousness that we have, the attachment to material consciousness. Do you understand what I'm saying?
The soul has free will.
Exactly. The soul has free will, but is that philosophical point correct, that the jiva is encoiled or enveloped in material nature? I thought it was our consciousness that was attached or encoiled. I didn't know it had anything to do with the jiva. Can you?
Let's see.
Is he on the forums?
The way you're voicing your question, I would ask you, what is the difference between the jiva and consciousness?
There's a subtle body, in my understanding, the subtle body, subtle consciousness that is not pure. But the jiva's consciousness, just like how the cowherd boys and the gopis, they're in spiritual consciousness, and they don't have the material attachments or consciousness that we have. So so the difference, in my opinion, or my understanding, is that the attachment is
what attachment? What attachment? What attachment?
For material energy, for wanting to be a controller, for wanting to enjoy as Lord of what we survey, for wanting to be in control. So separate from Krishna.
Patty,
I thought, is that correct? Is my comprehension correct?
I'm not real sure what your question is about. It's like an allegory. He's saying that just as Krishna, as I understand it, we were at the Holy Name Festival, so I haven't read his post yet. But it sounds like if he's saying, as Krishna was enveloped by the coils of Kaliya, similarly the jivas are encoiled and entrapped, caught in the modes of material nature, right?
Yes, it's exactly
in the sixth canto, there's a nice description, which explains that due to its misuse of free will, the living entity acts in such a way that creates actions and reactions by its karma. And the analogy is given that just as a silkworm envelops itself in its own cocoon with its saliva, the living entity by its own actions entraps him or herself. The jiva becomes trapped in the material world and covered by the cocoon like elements of material energy, both gross and subtle.
Right.
So does that kind of give an answer to your question?
Another
the jiva is always free.
Yes,
but it's so covered that it appears and identifies with the body and its material conditioning.
Right.
But we think we're the body. You think that you're the body. And Maya is real good. She is so good, she will capture you and not allow you to think anything else. She knows that part of ourselves that's very attached to the material world, to make us think that actually I am the mother of this person, I am the president of the United States, I am the best of this, I am whatever my desires are, or whatever I believe that I am. She'll make it reality to you. You know, it doesn't mean that you're that. What's another example? That's what we're doing, is looking for an example to describe that, how the soul is completely an illusion. The Prabhupada uses the example of a man is dreaming, and he's actually thinking he's getting attacked by a tiger. And I mean, he's into it. And unless that man is awakened, he's going to think that he's going to get eaten by a tiger. So wake up, Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago. We are in illusion, we're dreaming. We actually think that no matter what, I've spoken to people who trying to explain this philosophy. There is no way you can convince them. They haven't been awakened to any point where they cannot understand they're not the body. My brother, you're in the grave. That's where you stay.
Does this answer your question, Manutara? Is it more clear now? Manvantara?
Yes. I think she's trying to
Yes,
turn it on.
yes,
Okay.
completely
Okay.
answered my question.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so therefore we
I'm
can.
sorry. All right. Good.
Okay.
Okay. I'll put up the next slide, and why don't we have Neil read that?
Hello, good morning, all.
Good morning, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. In the Gandharva area, there then arose all three types of fearful omens: those of earth, those in the sky, and those in the bodies of the living creatures, which announced imminent danger.
Okay, say this Vrindavan. That's an important word that you should learn. Vrindavan. Vrindavan. That's where Krishna lives. That's where we
Yeah.
want to go. Vrindavan.
Vrindavan.
Good.
All right. Three inauspicious signs appeared in Viraj. Viraj?
Nickname for Vrindavan, Braj.
Thank you. Earthquakes on the earth, meteors falling in the sky, and shivering in the bodies of men, along with twitching of left eye. Though there can be nothing inauspicious of the Lord, in order to indicate the lamentation of the inhabitants of Vraj. The demigods in charge of earthquakes and other disturbances did this, or being attracted to the sweet and intimate
Madhurya.
Madhurya mood of Vraj. The demigods, out of affection for Krishna, wanted to cover this
Aishvarya.
Aishvarya, majestic, opulence. So they produced various omens indicating misfortune for Krishna.
It sounds as though we have our own language, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I know.
So they produced
You'll get used to it.
Oh,
Get used to it. Don't worry.
I'll
Give
get
yourself
it.
time.
I'll get it.
Good, you will. So, who can explain that? Who can explain that? What just happened? I mean, in the verse and the purport. I thought of something interesting. Adi Bodhik, Adi Daivik, Adi Atmika. It seems like all of those things are happening in the purport.
Sounds like Ian has some
Ian.
insight.
Oh, good. Ian, can you speak?
Hi, Krishna, everybody. So one possible thing is that, as you said, in order to cover the Lord's majestic opulence or something like that, then all these disturbances came. So I'm thinking, sometimes, in other words, the demigods are part of Krishna Lila. So sometimes there are, occurrences that follow. So I was wondering, why they had those, and you're saying that those symptoms, but you're saying that one area was to cover Krishna's majesty, and I'm not sure. I hope I'm not rambling, but I'm more thinking that in order to cover, in other words, the Lord is in the lake as part of the Leela, so there are certain events that follow certain things happening around. So there are certain omens also. So hope I'm not rambling, but it's part of a leader. So
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what it says in the purport here, that there were
Yeah.
certain things that appeared to cover Krishna's opulences. Is that, Patsy? Is that right? We were discussing this verse before.
Well, what it's indicating is that the demigods are cooperating with creating an environment that will inspire the Brijbasis in such a way that they become concerned for Krishna. That's actually what's happening. Faye?
You have something to say, Faye?
Yes, teacher, very much what Dhruva Maharaj was saying, similar thoughts. The omens or signs and potents, all these ill omens, they get your attention. Oh no, there's a tsunami. Oh no, there's an earthquake. Oh no. So it's an attention grabbing thing, and the demigods were enhancing that theater, that setting of that pastime in such a way that the citizens of Braj were really taking note. Something is going on. Oh no. Well, thank you.
Let's
You know,
find out what it was.
Can I just say this one thing that we spoke about before, Patti?
Go ahead.
About the demigods actually being fearful for Krishna also. And then when there's an inauspicious thing going on, it's magnified by the demigods. Everyone knows it because of the earthquakes. That's inauspicious because of the other symptoms that we see. So the demigods, as devotees and as lovers of Krishna, naturally, if something they were concerned also. That's just another way to look at it. That it's not that they're up there thinking. Look at Lord Brahma. He didn't even know that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's not that all the demigods at all times were aware that this was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Indra himself got fooled. So this could be natural reaction to see an inauspicious event. Not only in Ras, but of course, we have to accept the words of the Acharyas, that's for sure. And Acharya has some, there's two more.
Chattamai also.
Okay, Chattamai, then Acharya.
Dhanava pranams, dear devotees. I think Faye explained it beautifully, what's building up here. And in that regard, I'm wondering, there's one word in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation that confused me when I read it. It's you can scroll that up. It's the word indicate the lamentation of the Vraj residents.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it make, it's like halfway down on the left.
Yeah.
In order to indicate the lamentation, wouldn't it be more sensible to say it to incite the lamentation?
Oh,
Right, they're stimulating, as Faye was saying, they're stimulating the emotion of this whole event. So these inauspicious omens are the correct setting for the whole thing. So they're inciting.
We should talk to the author and edit it. Because incite does sound.
well, on the other side, when we were talking about how actually the demigods, maybe they didn't all understand this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they actually thought it was an inauspicious moment.
Well, then that kind of contradicts the purport, doesn't it?
Oh dear. Okay, then forget it. All right.
Acharya? Acharya also.
You agree with Chaitanya.
Working together to create this atmosphere.
Yes.
And it sounds like the demigods, somehow they're in on it. And so they want to add their coloring to it. And it all works together very beautifully. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Acharya?
One thing I like about the demigod sending the different omens is that it changed this pastime from something that just Krishna and the cowherd boys would experience, and then presumably at the end of the day they'd come home and tell everyone about it. But by those inauspicious omens, everyone in Vrindavan immediately came running down to see what was happening, and it turned into a pastime that the whole Vrindavan was able to take part in.
Very nice point. Yeah, good.
Vrindavan and the universe. right?
No.
Okay, everyone's involved in this one. Are we ready to go on? Okay, okay. Then is this the next one? Kate, are you with us?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, sweetie. Would you like to read?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam 10, 16, 13 through 15, Surata Darshini. Seeing the inauspicious omens, Nanda Maharaj and the other cowherd men were fearful, for they know that Krishna had gone to herd the cows that day without his elder brother Balaram. Because they had dedicated their minds to Krishna, accepting him as their very life, they were unaware of his great power and opulence. Thus, they concluded that the inauspicious omens indicated he had met with death, and they were overwhelmed with grief, lamentation, and fear. All the inhabitants of Vrindavan, including the children, women, and elderly persons, thought of Krishna just as a cow thinks of her helpless young calf, and thus these poor, suffering people rushed out of the village intent upon finding him. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura, seeing the inauspicious omens, Nanda Maharaj and other inhabitants rushed out of the village of Gokula. This is described in 3 verses. Observing the omens, the Vrajavasis thought Krishna had died. But how can God die? The word Nidana also means a great treasure. Indeed, Krishna had obtained the great treasure of a joyful sport in Yamuna. The Vrajavasis were behaving just as an affectionate cow does toward her calf. Overwhelmed with fear and unhappiness, they rushed out of Gokula in great anxiety.
Why don't you read the next one too?
10, 16, 16. The Supreme Lord Balaram, the master of all transcendental knowledge, smiled and said nothing when he saw the residents of Vrindavan in such distress. He understood the extraordinary power of his younger brother. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, according to Harivamsa, the word Madhava means master of intelligence. Balaram is described here as the master of intelligence because he knew the power of Krishna's Leela Shakti. Though Balaram had the greatest affection for his younger brother, he understood that Krishna desired to cover his opulence with his Leela Shakti. Therefore, Balaram prevented Nanda and others from drowning themselves in the Yamuna out of grief. Balaram was laughing because he thought, Krishna never cares to play with me in my form of Sheshanag, but now he is playing with this common mundane snake named Kaliya. Remembering Krishna's pastimes as an ordinary mortal, Balaram smiled and said nothing, though the situation was beyond tolerance. However, when Balaram smiled, the Vrajavasis forgot their fear and lamentation and felt that nothing unfortunate would happen. Filling with the joy of Balaram's smile, they no longer desired to give up their lives.
Wow, so many different things in these 2 verses. Can you say something without me giving you hints?
Yeah, there is a lot. It's just the sport of it all, how that word to me stuck out because, it's a sport. So when we think of that, of doing that, right? That's what Krishna is doing here. It's all
Sport.
It's all perfectly under his control. And yet everybody is so affected so differently. And then you have Balaram, so compassionate, and so intelligent. That's also a big part of these verses.
Yeah. He's not afraid at all. I particularly like that part about the snake. Could you put that back, Pati? What Balaram says. Why don't you play with me in my Seshanaga form? You're having more fun with this rascal Kaliya. I thought that was beautiful. We know that Lord Balaram is Seshanag, who holds up the universe. And Krishna, okay, read this one. Krishna never cares to play with me.
Krishna
Okay.
never cares to play with me in my form of Sheshanag, but now he is playing with this common mundane snake named Kaliya.
See, this also shows that Krishna's a person, that Balaram's a person, that they have pastimes I mean, look what they're talking about. He doesn't play, but actually he does play with him in his. Who can say how Krishna plays with Balaram in his snake form? Think for a minute. Who can say? Nobody knows. Okay, who's lying down in the Karana Ocean?
Oh,
Huh?
so Karanakadaish,
Yeah.
Karanakashai Vishnu. So he uses
So
him as his bed.
right. So there, wherever he said, but not in this particular form where it's really a rasa, but he's serving in his snake form. Okay, well that I kind of like that one. And anything else?
Looks like Manvantari has her hand
Oh,
up.
Manvantari, what would you like to say?
I was wondering if this was an indication about this very statement that Balaram made was an indication of like the term that we use, like rasbas, in terms of services. Like in this material world, human resources has been doing this, trying to perfect the mixing of different roles. And so like Balaram is in the form of Seshanaga, is the servant of Lord Krishna. And so he's thinking, oh, Krishna doesn't play with me. And then Krishna in that role is the master. And you just, I guess I'm asking, would that be a mix of roles or service? You know what I mean? Like, there's so much extreme examples. It's just like when a maid goes into a rich man's house and he has conjugal relations with her because he's her boss and he thinks he can control her like that. But she's married and she goes home and it ruins families. You know what I mean? It's like a mix. Like she's a servant. She's there as a servant, and
Yeah, well, there's no rasabas with Krishna and Balaram.
Right, but that
rasabas.
thought, of course, there's no rasabas. But I'm thinking, would it have been if Balaram is indicating here that, oh, Krishna never plays with me, like I can relate.
But I took it more as, he was appreciating that game, and Krishna was enjoying this pastime. We had just read it before that this was a very joyful pastime for him, even though it put everybody in intense anxiety. It was a very joyful pastime for Krishna, and he was just getting off on it, I would say, by saying, hey, I'm Anantasesha here, and you're not even playing with me like that. But they wrestle, they play all the time together. I think he was appreciating the position of Kaliya. I think he was appreciating that. And that was his comeback. I could be wrong. Maybe it's my Monday mind.
Oh, that sounds right. Sounds good.
Okay. But that's a good point. We have to be aware of all the different things. It's called aropa. Aropa means seeing the material, seeing spiritual life in terms of our material vision. Aropa. That's really, it's a two different ball games completely. You can't apply the rules for one ball game to another. So that's actually the source of rasabas, that was seeing materially Krishna's pastimes. All right, Tisha, thank you for reading Kate. Natisha, you go on.
Hi, Krishna. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam 10, 16, verse 17 and 18 from Sarartha Darshini. The residents hurried toward the banks of the Yamuna in search of their dearmost Krishna, following the path marked by his footprints, which bore the unique signs of the personality of Godhead. The footprints of Lord Krishna, the master of the entire cowherd community, were marked with the lotus flower, barley corn, elephant goad, thunderbolt, and flag. My dear King Parikshit, seeing his footprints on the path among the cow's hoofprints, the residents of Vrindavan rushed along in great haste. Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur. This verse describes how the Brajavasis recognized Krishna's footprints. Vishpate means the master of the Vaishyas, cow herd community, and refers to Krishna. Ignoring the cow's hoofprints, they exclusively followed the footprints of Krishna. This verse hints of the discerning yogi who follows the path of the Vedas in pursuance of the highest truth while rejecting all illusory appearances of truth.
Okay, go on to the.
Yeah. Okay.
You're going to the next one, because that's the same topic.
So 10:16, verse 18 to 21. Finally, by following the footprints marked with flag, bow, and conch shell, the inhabitants of Vrindavan arrived at the riverbank and saw that all the cows and boys were weeping to behold Krishna enwrapped in the coils of the black serpent. Then they became still more overwhelmed with grief. While Balaram was smiling to see their lamentation, all the inhabitants of Vrajabhumi merged into the ocean of grief because they thought that Krishna was finished. Although the residents of Vrindavan did not know much about Krishna, their love for him was beyond comparison. As soon as they saw that Krishna was in the river Yamuna, enveloped by the serpent Kaliya, and that all the boys and cows were lamenting, they simply began to think of Krishna's friendship, his smiling face, his sweet words, and his dealings with them. Thinking of all these and believing that their Krishna was now within the clutches of Kaliya, they at once felt that the three worlds had become vacant. Lord Chaitanya also said that he was seeing the three worlds as vacant for want of Krishna. This is the highest stage of Krishna consciousness. Almost all of the inhabitants of Vrindavan had the highest ecstasy, love for Krishna.
Very good. Okay, there's two things. One of the text before this about the discerning yogi. That's a really important point, and now you get to talk about it.
I think that's so clever and cool to make that comparison of not following the cow's footprints, because you could go any way, you're on the path, but there's so many different detours. You might get caught up in this and caught up in that. And you just simply have to follow Krishna's footprints and you're safe.
Good. Simply put, very important. Simple, but simple and for the simple. Very, very important. Now, there's another point in the next, before you tell me your own realizations. In the next verse, Patti, if you want to put it on, there's a verse quoted that Lord Chaitanya speaks in his Shikshastika, and he talks about love and separation. You want to read that? Read that.
Lord Chaitanya also said that he was seeing the three worlds as vacant for want of Krishna.
So
this is the highest stage of Krishna consciousness.
Yes, go on, keep going.
This is the highest stage of Krishna consciousness. Almost all of the inhabitants of Vrindavan had the highest ecstasy, love for Krishna.
So in that ecstasy, there's also anxiety. Anxiety for fear of Krishna, for fear of not being able to see Krishna and be with him.
Yeah.
But this is, and in the material world, what do we think about separation? We don't like it. That it's not considered to be the highest. Although Shakespeare himself said happiness, separation makes the heart grow fonder. But this kind of love that Lord Chaitanya is describing, that he can't, everything is vacant. The only year of separation, I'm considering a moment to be 12 years or more. And that is love. That's what it is. It's love. And that's what we all want. That's the only thing that will satisfy the soul, is this intense separation that makes us cry.
Yeah.
It doesn't, but it's true. It's true, because that's what love is. Love makes you cry.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Okay, we can go on unless someone else has something to say about this. We could spend like eternity discussing that point, which we actually should. But we're not going to today. We're going to go on with Manvantara. Why don't you read, sweetie? Thank you, Tisha. Perfect.
Krishna book. When Mother Yashoda arrived, she wanted to enter the river Yamuna, and being checked, she fainted. Other friends who were equally aggrieved were shedding tears like torrents of rain or waves of the river. But in order to bring Mother Yashoda to consciousness, they began to speak loudly about the transcendental pastimes of Krishna. Mother Yashoda remained still, as if dead, because her consciousness was concentrated on the face of Krishna. Nanda and all others who dedicated everything, including their lives, to Krishna, were ready to enter the waters of the Yamuna. But Lord Balaram checked them because he was in perfect knowledge that there was no danger.
Boy, isn't this a little bit Rasabas, since we're talking about Rasabas? It seems, right? One thing is that we're talking about the highest love, and then Balaram is saying, don't worry. Don't worry. He knows what he's doing. Very interesting. So before we discuss fully, why don't you read the next verse?
Sartha Darshini. The Lord remained for some time within the coils of the serpent, imitating the behavior of an ordinary mortal. But when he understood that the women, children, and other residents of his village of Gokul were in acute distress because of their love for him, their only shelter and goal in life, he immediately rose up from the bonds of the Kaliya serpent. Visvanatha Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. Seeing that the Vrajabasis had no other goal or shelter, and fully understanding their sorrow, Krishna spoke to Kaliya after remaining gripped in his coils for 1 muhurta, 48 minutes. Krishna said, "Listen, Kaliya, you have shown me enough of your strength. Now I will show you a little of my prowess, though I am just a cowherd boy." Then Krishna broke free from the snake and stood up.
Okay, what do you think, Mama Tara?
I don't think it's Rasabasa at all what Balaram said, actually, because as you said, you're talking about the greatest love, and they all have love for Krishna based on their particular type of relationship, and they're expressing that. I don't think there's anything contradictory to that at all.
Good. I mean, it might appear to be because he's the Supreme Lord, and they're fearful about him. But as you said, Rasa always conquers. Rasa is supreme. So the love is supreme. A love supreme. A real love supreme. There was a great jazz musician who wrote about a love supreme, John Coltrane. A love supreme. I was going to name my book A Love Supreme, but I thought it was already taken. So Divine Love Trip was good. All right, enough of that. I'm too playful today. All right, so what else do you think about that? What about the Lord seeing the distress of his devotees? He's seeing the distress of his devotees, and that motivated him. What does that mean? Mamatarji.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's his MO, right? That's his that's how he relates to people, to his devotees. He always acts with love and affection for his devotees, and he did the same thing for Brahma. I mean, that's the whole point of his incarnation. When Brahma showed up with the other demigods and Mother Bhumi, he acted from their requests, their behalf, their questions, and so he's always that's just the fabric of his nature. Yeah,
nice point. Imagine we're actually learning to know the nature and characteristic and feelings of the Supreme Personality, the God, the Supreme Lord, and the way the story is framed, we're always hearing about the demigods making the omens and the devotees running out of the village and running towards him, and Mother Yasoda fainting. So we see it from their point of view. Very rarely, but in this circumstance, Sama just brought it out of we see also Krishna's response to that. He sees he sees what's going on the shore. He's not unconscious out in the enveloped. He's actually watching all this, and he's appreciating their love for him. So now he's going to want to respond and respond with their love and make a show to let them know he's okay.
Yeah, that's what Krishna's always doing. He creates all these situations that actually torment us, maybe torment his devotees, and then just to increase the bhav, just to increase the love. And because we are covered, like Mandantar was pointing out, we are covered by the material energy. We need to break free of that, and we're going to see how purified Kaliya became by the end of this little section here. He didn't have anything left, all that poison, and finally, after dancing on his head and breaking all his bones and the whole thing, and finally, he realizes who he's dealing with. I mean, that's like, what does it take? I mean, we've been here for a long time, and still, we're fortunate. We're the fortunate ones. Okay, are we moving on here?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Ian, would you like to read?
Yeah. Okay. So Srimad Bhagavatam 10, 16, 24. Sarartha Darshini. His skull is tormented by the expanding body of the Lord. Kaliya released him. In great anger, the serpent then raised his hoods high and stood still, breathing heavily. His nostrils appeared like vessels for cooking poison, and the staring eyes in his face like firebrands. Thus the serpent looked at the Lord. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur. This verse describes Krishna's freeing himself from the snake and Kaliya's weakening. Kaliya let go of Krishna because he felt pained by the expanding body of the Lord, which was previously much smaller. After releasing Krishna, Kaliya raised his huge hoods, breathing heavily, and stared at Krishna. Snake's nostrils were full of poison, and the glowing eyes in his face resembled firebrands. You know what is firebrands?
Okay, go on.
Continue,
Go
yes.
on.
Yes, Krishna book 10.16, 23, 26. On account of this strain, his coil slackened, and he had no other alternative but to let loose the person of Godhead, Krishna, from his grasp. Kaliya then became very angry, and his great hoods expanded. He exhaled poisonous fumes from his nostrils. His eyes blazed like fire, and a flame issued from his mouth. The great serpent remained still for some time, looking at Krishna. Licking his lips with bifurcated tongues, the serpent looked at Krishna with double hoods, and his eyesight was full of poison. Krishna immediately pounced upon him, just as Garuda swoops upon a snake. Thus attacked, Kaliya looked for an opportunity to bite him, but Krishna moved around him. As Krishna and Kaliya moved in a circle, the serpent gradually became fatigued, and his strength seemed to diminish considerably. Krishna immediately pressed down the serpent's hoods and jumped up on them. The Lord's lotus feet became tinged with red from the rays of the jewels on the snake's hoods.
Okay, looks like Krishna likes a good fight. What do you got to say about these two verses?
So, Kaliya, wouldn't fed threatening, was this the guy, threatening my domain? So he decided, as a snake, full of anger, envy, and hatred, it said later on that he tried his best to harm Krishna. So, Krishna, in other words, Krishna appeared. I think somebody said that Krishna looked so beautiful. But then, because he had so much anger, hatred, and envy, he could not see the brilliance of Krishna. Yes. So, for us, in terms of those vices, anger, hatred, and envy, it was able to see the beautiful nature of Krishna. So, or else he would not have tried to, do all of those things. Yeah, and there was Krishna, saying, I'm in charge. So, raise up a hood, he pushed it down. So, yes, so I felt very pain itself. And also, it's interesting, I was thinking, Kaliya had so much hoods and was so beautifully decorated. I mean, as a snake. But there was, he was some saved in a previous life. So Yeah, yes. So although he came in as a serpent, really was, decorated to,
it's
maybe
unusual.
to a unity.
It's unusual
Yes.
to see a snake decorated like that. Although they say that the cobra, they have a jewel on their hoods, but yeah, he was decked out. In fact, we're going to read later how there was so much opulence offered to the Lord from his treasure chest down in the lake. These things are 5,000 years ago. Things were happening. We can't even understand these kinds of things. But all right. Anyone else has?
Acharya has his hand up.
Oh, Charji.
Yeah, I don't want to do a spoiler, but it made me laugh a little bit when Krishna attacking Kaliya was compared to Garuda swooping down on a snake, because it's a little bit of foreshadowing of the next chapter
Oh,
when Kaliya's history is expanded. I thought that was kind of cute and interesting.
good. Yeah, a little bit of look what's coming up. Good. Very good.
I also did a search trying to find out the backstory of Kaliya's wives, because they're going to offer prayers in a moment, next sections. And I couldn't really find anything, but I did find interesting that in Vedic literature, there is descriptions of the species called Nagas. There's a planet, and they're very wealthy. They're snake-like, but and it's almost like akin to the monkeys and bears that are associated with Ram. Somehow or another, they can speak, and they have culture, and they have civilizations, but they're just another species. We don't see them on this planet, but that doesn't mean they don't exist elsewhere in the universe. Of course, here Kaliya is manifest. He's one of them.
I have a question. I was just hearing Prabhupada was saying on a lecture that there are two kinds of envious living entities. A snake, the nature of a snake's body is nature, as that he's envious. And of course, he said a man, this is Chanakya Pandit, a man is the other species in human form. There's a snake-like envious person, and the snake is not as dangerous as the human being who's envious, because the snake can be charmed through herbs and mantras and pacified, but nothing can pacify an envious human being. So my question is, on the planet where the snakes are they envious? Oh,
It would appear so. That's the nature of
nature.
the nature of the species. Just like
Envious.
human beings are by nature passionate. You get a body according to the modes of material nature, right? So those modes are such.
Right.
It would appear.
Acharya, did you want to say something?
Yeah,
did you say
about the
something?
snakes being envious. Also, again, without going into the whole history, it's sort of the snakes, the mother of the snakes, Kashyapa's other wife, also
She was
had an
envious.
envy problem.
Oh, Krishna. See,
She had an
passed
envy
it
problem
on.
also, and maybe she passed it on to her
Passed
snake
it.
offspring.
Oh, that's interesting, because that also
A
happens.
can of worms is what it is. It's a can of worms. All right. Wow. I mean, all of these things we can speak about infinitely. Let's get finished. And Chaitya, would you like to continue reading?
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:16-26, Sarata Darshini. Having severely depleted the serpent's strength with his relentless circling, Sri Krishna, the origin of everything, pushed down Kaliya's raised shoulders and mounted his broad serpentine heads. Thus, Lord Sri Krishna, the original master of all fine arts, began to dance, his lotus feet deeply reddened by the touch of the numerous jewels upon the serpents' heads. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Sri Harivamsa, confirms that with one hand, Krishna was able to push down Kaliya's raised head, which had gradually become tired from his relentless circling. Mounting the snake's broad heads, Krishna began to dance. Krishna's lotus feet became red like copper from touching the numerous jewels upon the heads of Kaliya. As a dancer sometimes demonstrates his expertise by dancing on different objects, such as dishes, Krishna showed that he is original guru of all fine arts by skillfully dancing on the unsteady, moving surface of the serpent's hoods. In addition, Krishna's remarkable display of dancing skill was meant to please the young damsels of Raj, who at this stage of their relationship were seriously falling in love, Purva Rag, with him. Krishna book, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:16, 27 through 30. While Krishna was dancing on his hoods, Kaliya tried to push him down with some of his other hoods. Kaliya had about 100 hoods, but Krishna took control of them. He began to dash Kaliya with his lotus feet, and this was more than the serpent could bear. Gradually, Kaliya was reduced to struggling for his very life. He vomited all kinds of refuse and exhaled fire. While throwing up poisonous material from within, Kaliya became reduced in his sinful situation. Out of great anger, he began to struggle for existence and tried to raise one of his hoods to kill the Lord. The Lord immediately captured that hood and subdued it by kicking it and dancing on it. It actually appeared as if the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu was being worshipped. The poisons emanating from the mouth of the serpent appeared to be like flower offerings. Kaliya then began to vomit blood instead of poison. He was completely fatigued. His whole body appeared to be broken by the kicks of the Lord. Within his mind, however, he finally began to understand that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he began to surrender unto him. He realized that Krishna was the Supreme Lord, the master of everything. Whew.
You have to unmute, Priya. Sama.
Yeah, look what it took. This is what it takes.
Yeah.
This is we have to get massacred.
Yes.
Krishna firstly has to kick us for us to understand that, the reality. What do you have to say about this? Chaito? What is it?
Desperate times, desperate measures. He loves us so much, he'll do anything. This is an allegory for, like you're saying, what it takes for us to have to realize, sometimes by hearing and sometimes by experience. And so Kali is experiencing extreme distress. That's the only way to get it through, that he's not the most powerful. So it's very wonderful.
It's wonderful. Read the last, go back, Patsy, if you could go back to the last verse that was read from the Krishna book. That is really the center. Start from actually.
Okay. Actually, I'm looking for the word.
Midway through, it actually appeared as if the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
There we go. Thank you. It actually appeared as if the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu was being worshipped. The poisons emanating from the mouth of the serpent appeared to be like flower offerings. So maybe this is our finally coming to the realization.
Well, keep reading, sweetie. Keep reading.
Okay, sorry.
Kaliya then began to vomit.
Then began to vomit blood instead of poison. He was completely fatigued. His whole body appeared to be broken by the kicks of the Lord. Within his mind, however, he finally began to understand that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he began to surrender unto him. He realized that Krishna was the Supreme Lord, the master of everything.
I don't think we could read that section too many times. That is so. So talk about that, Chaita.
So this is very elegant, even in the what seems like a horrible, violent, crushing defeat. There is this appearance of Krishna being worshipped.
That's there too. But what about the he was sometimes you got to scrape something, you have a dirty pipe and you have to keep scraping it, and there's a lot of crap coming out of the pipe, and then finally you see pure water coming out. A lot has to go into purification. This was the epitome of purification. That's what I saw.
Purification. This is what's happening to us. This is us in our material existence going through these excruciating situations, and I don't want to be
the
doing
more
this
excruciating,
anymore.
the better.
Yeah.
Look at what he did to Kalia. He danced on his heads. He threw up poison and venom, and his nostrils were emanating poison like firebrands. And finally, he threw up blood. When I read that, finally he threw up blood. It was like he was clean.
Finally, the clear water's coming through.
Yeah. He was clean, and then only then could he realize who he was fighting.
So reading this is reminding me to have sympathy for everyone, because you see people going through stuff and say, well, this is Krishna purifying them. So we need to have that broader vision that this is the modus operandi in the material world. All of this strangeness and weirdness is there for our purification.
Point. Not only for those that we don't know, but even the ones we love.
Yeah.
So, we think we don't want to see them suffer, but actually there's a much higher purpose to all of it.
You gotta suffer. Kalia was suffering. He was suffering. There was a complete transformation due to that suffering. He had to suffer to go through that.
Acharya's got his hand up too.
Acharyaji, I didn't see the screen doesn't go all the way down. Yeah. Okay, sweetie.
I also really love the description of Krishna as the greatest artist that he's fighting. And, in the material world, a fight is, it's gross. It's like you punch someone in the nose, but his fighting is his dancing. And it said, in the spiritual world, every step is a dance, every word is a song. And, I was thinking like the material reflection, there's that Brazilian martial art that I don't know how to pronounce it properly, capoeira.
Capoeira.
And it's like a melding of dance and martial arts. So Krishna is the best at that. That he's the best fighter and at the same time the most artistic dancer. So I really enjoyed that description. I like that a lot.
Beautiful.
Before we go on, Chattamai, I also wanted to hear your realizations about this last sentence.
Okay. Krishna's remarkable display of dancing skill was meant to please the young damsels of Raj, who at this stage of their relationship were seriously falling in love, Purva Raga, with him.
So a little bit about Purva Raga.
Purva Raga. Purva Raga indicates initial attraction. And
even prior to meeting, right? I mean, there's something that happened.
Just hearing about Krishna, we're magnetized. We want to get closer to him. We want to know more. And so here it's the natural flow. Krishna is reciprocating directly. They're standing there watching, and it's all happening. And this is an indication of Chadaratma, which is Krishna's ability to do multiple things with one action.
Nice.
Right. Yeah. And everyone feels a different way in relation to him. Everybody, he's dancing on the hoods. Every single person in Braj is going through their own thing with him. And the gopis are saying, whoa, look. And the boys are like getting into it. And Balaram's standing there knowing everything. it's so wonderful, these pastimes, you know, all inclusive. All right, we have
One more slide.
Yeah, one more slide. Acharya, why don't you read that one? Thank you, Chaita. That was
Jai Guru.
beautiful.
Everyone is already read?
Yes.
Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam 10, chapter 16, text 30, Sarartha Darshini. My dear King Parikshit, Lord Krishna's wonderful, powerful dancing trampled and broke all of Kaliya's 1,000 hoods. Then the serpent, profusely vomiting blood from his mouths, finally recognized Sri Krishna to be the eternal personality of Godhead, the supreme master of all moving and non-moving beings, Sri Narayan. Thus within his mind, Kaliya took shelter of the Lord. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Though the seed of devotion, Bhakti Bijam, had previously been planted in Kaliya's heart by the mercy of his wives, who were actually exalted devotees of Krishna, it could not sprout because of Kaliya's cruel behavior due to his previous aparads, just as seeds sown on barren ground cannot sprout. By the purifying touch of Krishna's lotus feet, however, Kaliya's offense was neutralized and the seed of devotion began to sprout. Kaliya remembered or realized that he was now fighting an opponent who was thousands of times stronger than his arch rival Garuda, and therefore this person must be the Supreme Lord. Kaliya thought, quote, "This is the person my wives had previously described as being approachable by bhakti. Taking the position of my guru, he placed his feet on my head. Then by displaying his extraordinary power, he made me realize what a fool I am to think that I am God. Now I will take shelter of him," unquote.
Wow. Okay, Acharya, that is glorious. What can
That's
you say?
really amazing. One thing that I really like about it is that Kaliya's wives are more advanced than Kaliya himself, which is kind of beautiful. And it reminds me also, same thing with the Yagya Patnis, that the wives were more advanced than the husbands who were materialistic. Or even in Vrindavan, the gopis are the topmost persons. So it's interesting to see that in what is generally speaking a patriarchal society, but the recognition that the wives were actually more advanced than the husband, I think is nice.
Okay, I got to tell a story now. I got to tell this one story. At my initiation, there were a lot of women and children in Berkeley, and the children, and there was something about the text and the verses that the children and the women and the anyway. First of all, what happened was the children started to cry, and then one devotee said, "All women and children go out." And then Prabhupada said, "No, that's okay. Let them stay." Then it happened again. And then the devotee was really getting anxious and told all women and children out. And then Prabhupada said, women are not responsible. They're not responsible. Children are not responsible. Brahmins are not responsible.
Not responsible and not to be punished.
Not to be responsible for their acts. They are not to be punished. But he said the word "not responsible," and he said old men are not responsible. So, and then he said,
"So I'm included too."
So Prabhupada said, "In this assembly, no one is responsible." So everybody laughed. Everybody laughed. But then Prabhupada said, "Don't take advantage. Don't take advantage." So all these things, let's not get puffed up about anything, because we have nothing to be puffed up about, no matter what you are, man, woman, whatever.
That's a good segue. I wanted to hear Acharya's thoughts on this part also, that the seeds of devotion, although previously planted, couldn't sprout due to his aparads. There's a good principle in this purport. Even though it's a seed sown in the ground, it can't sprout because of his aparads. Little explanation.
I don't know so much. I know Prabhupada compared to like a spark, like if a spark falls on water, or if a spark falls on dry sand, or if a spark falls on wood, that the spark is the same, but if it falls on the water, it's extinguished. If it falls on the rock, it can lay dormant for some time, but only if it falls on the wood does it actually catch fire. So people get the gift of devotional service, and according to, like it said here, the aparadhs or whatever the mental condition is, it may or may not immediately take effect.
Well, that's actually what I was hoping we'd kind of understand. This is the age of Kali, where we naturally cruel, argumentative, finding fault with others in order to puff ourselves up. It's part of the nature. But here it's just, and we see that there's a lot of offensive statements and infighting, and people argue over small things. It's the nature of this age. But here it's described that hinders one's devotion. It actually curtails it and snuffs it. Ian?
Yeah. Ian?
Yeah, Krishna. So,
Ian?
yes. So possibly too, as I made a post that in a previous life, I forget what his name was. Either a friend in a rishi.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
you know,
and the rishi seemed to be a snake. Yes. So I'm thinking that he had to be paying for that too, in the sense that because it was offensive to the matter of fact, in the same post he said Sabarhi Muni, the one that cursed Garuda, and Kali, whatever his name was in a former life, they committed the apparatus, so they both fell down. So I'm saying that as far in terms of us, having to get rid of those impurities, but like I'm saying, for the post, it seems that he was also having to be paying back for those, for having, sort of insulted the rishi who wanted to have some sort of.
oh, I couldn't even, wait a second. Is
So
everybody,
it was cursed. It was cursed by rishi.
is everybody understanding what he's saying?
He said that because in his previous life he was envious.
Yeah.
Therefore, that's carrying through. Ian, maybe this week you can check your computer's connections. It sounds like there's some loose. It's causing like some static in your.
And you have so many wonderful things to say. I'm almost ready to do a GoFundMe for a new computer for you, except I don't know how to do it. But in any case, you have so many wonderful things to offer, and most of the time, I can't. Anyway, you work on it this week.
Yeah.
Assignment.
Also,
Sorry,
since we're online,
Yeah.
Ian, if you go to your afterwards, if you go to your audio settings, let's see, I'm doing it right now. You go to your audio settings down at the bottom, audio settings, then go to advanced, and it says something about echo control. So if you can look into that this week, that would be helpful. And that brings us to the future. Now that we're
Okay.
going into December, I want to remind everyone that for the Christmas holidays, we're only going to have 4 lessons, means 2 more reviews. This one coming up on the 7th, and then another one on the 11th or 12th, whatever it is. And then we'll take a 2-week break so everyone can keep that in mind for their schedule. And January 1st is a Sunday. So again, I'll post the next, we'll finish up this Kaliya Leela and the Kaliya pastime in December. And then we'll go on with the next chapter starting January 1st.
Before we end, I wanted to tell everyone that because the Holy Name Festival is going on, I was thinking, how am I ever going to do this? And the Holy Name Festival is going on. I was being ripped apart, which to go to, and because my dear friend Ruchira is singing, but then as we started speaking, I was so appreciative of all of you in your enthusiasm to hear this wonderful transcendental knowledge. And this is the goal. This is the goal, that we can share this kind of love between each other that is foundational in Krishna consciousness. And I thank you so much for that. And I look forward to next week. And I just look forward to eternity doing this with everyone. Hare Krishna. Now I'm going to run to the Holy Name Festival. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Yeah. Enjoy.
Hare Krishna.